Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far, and it's all kicking off between the pros because the smokes and the snipers have been banned yet again for the upcoming season, but the majority of pros seem to disagree with this decision and believe that two individuals are holding the entire community hostage on this problem. Who exactly are these individuals? Can we find out over the coming minutes? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. No time to waste today, we've got to crack on. Thought this is pretty funny from Sasha, to be honest. Of course, doesn't get too involved in the GAs in terms of what actually gets banned, but is very much involved in the discussion circulating around gentlemen's agreements, which is again the circle of conversation today. It's always a talking point every year, and honestly, I don't mind too much when it comes down to, okay, get rid of this gun, get rid of that gun, because at the end of the day, some guns are going to get used anyway, so it's always going to be a two-gun meta in the state of the game nowadays. It doesn't really matter what gets GA'd from the gun perspective, although maybe no M4 makes the weapon kind of balancing a little bit better for the SMGs, but that's not the case. Now, the snipers and the smokes, though, the smokes not so much, don't really care about that so much, but the snipers, it's really frustrating because the snipers, of course, were removed from Cold War. I think that made the viewing experience for Search and Destroy far worse, honestly, that season. Vanguard's the snipers came back, and there were some great moments with the snipers. Yes, they were only used on, worse maps like Desert Siege, but they were used on Tuscan. There were some great moments from Nasty and other players. Octane, of course, had his fair share of moments as well. Even at the kickoff, we saw Clayster get a nasty 1v2 with the sniper, and that was one of the biggest clips, I think, of the entire season, and that made waves even outside of just the competitive community. The great sniper players, everyone loves to see them, and it's a staple of like every good FPS game. However, the pros don't agree. But the thing is, the majority of pros seem to agree with what the community would say, that we want the snipers in. But some pros have gone to such an extent to get rid of them that they've basically had to agree to it. So, I mean, it's honestly absolute chaos. But Octane is not a happy man. He says the following: hope you guys enjoy watching S&D this year with no snipers. Played all of Vanguard with snipers and no smokes, but geez, it sure is OP. Absolutely comical. So this is the thing. They've decided to get rid of the smoke grenades. Now look, okay, we don't really want the smoke grenades gone because in an ideal world, they allow teams to do a little bit more offense in Search and Destroy. Maybe it just becomes super defense heavy now. We'll discuss that in a second. But also they do allow some counters to sniper rifles, and the claim was in Cold War that, okay, if we have to get rid of the smokes because they're broken, they've got one ways, you can drop a smoke at your feet and run around and it's really difficult to kill you, and you get kind of a one-way effect anyway where you can see the other guy, he can't see you, the aim assist is messed up. Smokes aren't always great. I think they're better in this game though than they were in Cold War, to be honest. So still, the idea is you get rid of them, you got to get rid of the snipers. That was the argument in Cold War. That argument was basically proved false in Vanguard though, because the smokes were also gone, but the snipers were still used. The pros decided to get rid of the snipers before last season began. You guys might remember the community was in uproar about it and effectively forced them to try it at the kickoff classic. They did, and then they were like, actually, yeah, these snipers aren't really that OP anyway. And that's the frustrating thing to me. The snipers this year are probably worse than they were last year, and yet they're still getting banned, despite the fact that, like, there's no world in which a team is ever going to be using 2+ snipers on the map. There's only ever going to be one. It's really frustrating stuff. Now, this was then officially confirmed. Snipers are fully gone. Smoke grenades are fully gone. Now, where has this come from, and why is it kind of coming out of nowhere? Even as Bance says, smokes and snipers went before the M4. That is mind-blowing, and this comes down again to the way that these GAs are constructed. GAs, gentlemen's agreements, there's 12 pro teams. These 12 teams have 12 representatives in a group chat, and they decide between them what happens. They give their vote per team. The thing is that I don't just go in there and give their vote on a certain kind of motion, let's say. They try and convince the other teams of their perspective, and they say X, Y, Z to try and force the other teams to kind of align to their point of view. And we'll see that here in a second, what might be going on. So even as Sasha reckons, right, bet you wish I was still in the GA chat, because Sasha doesn't even get involved in the chat nowadays. But as I say, he's very much in the discussion around it on Twitter last night. And as Octane says, actually hilarious how idiotic this is. So he's not on board with it. Even Parasite says, no smokes in Search and Destroy with this time to kill. What are you guys smoking, right? Bad decision, because you need the smoke grenades to do anything to try and make a play on offense, rather than just getting mown down on the cross every single time by a guy that can just see you, of course, because you can't chug a smoke to do the cross. And this apparently is the reason why the smokes were banned. And this is where the whole pros holding other pros hostage argument comes into effect. So basically the reason smokes were banned, and that by extension, right, the pros said, and maybe this was the idea in the person that's holding them hostage, is that they wanted snipers gone, and to do that they came up with a reason to get rid of smokes, and then they can make the argument that, okay, no smokes, we can't use snipers because there's no counter, whereas that worked perfectly fine last year. Whatever, this is the reason. The smokes were banned because certain someones threatened to use thermal scopes on their weapons, and since the current perk system doesn't allow you to get a perk 2 until later in the game because of the perk delay thing, thermals are uncounterable. So someone wanted the smokes gone, maybe wanted the snipers gone by extension, and said, you know what guys, if you don't ban it, we're going to start using thermal scopes in our scrims, and then you're going to have, there's just going to be no counter to it because you can't even use cold-blooded until later in the map. So, I mean, this is just honestly incredible. Comes down to the way the game plays, first of all, but also, like, the pros are just doing this to each other, right? Like, some pro wants their way in terms of what they want the game to play like, and they effectively just holding hostage the rest of the guys and saying, well, if you guys don't agree, then we're just going to ruin all your scrims. So, but then surely you can't just blacklist that team, because that's the idea. If you break the GAs, the theoretical argument is that you then get blacklisted and no pros want to scrim against you because you're playing on different rules. But surely it kind of also works the other way around. Is that, okay, well, if you want to hold us hostage, we just won't scrim you guys. I don't know. It's an absolute mess. And this is one of the reasons why there needs to be a better way to do this than, you know, the pros just behind the scenes in this mysterious group chat discussing what's going on. We have no idea what's happening. And then we get things like this coming out publicly. And as Method says, I'm leaking names for gifted. So it's funny how this works, because every pro you see on Twitter is coming out and saying, oh yeah, it wasn't me, sir. It wasn't me. Nothing to do with me. But apparently Scrappy might have been involved in this because, you know, Zuma replies, seriously, bro, Scrappy. Scrappy says the following and then goes on to say this as well. So Parasite says, you know, whoever these two people are, you guys are children throwing a fit because you didn't get your way. That should mean something coming from me, says Haggy. And then Bean says, fight back. And Scrappy then says, so presumably Scrappy is one of these two individuals. I don't care about any of this GA stuff. Spawn me up with anything. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? Is Scrappy the guy that's forced this, or is Scrappy now the guy that's saying, oh, I don't care, guys, just give me anything, give me the smokes, give me the snipers, I'll still fry you anyway. So that's just what I don't understand here, that the pros do this stuff behind the scenes, and then on the public, when they're tweeting out, they're like, oh yeah, it wasn't me, sir. Like, absolutely no problems at all. Like, okay, Method says the same thing, wasn't me. I don't believe it was Method's, but, you know, I'm just saying it's pretty funny, right? So even Clay in the replies, as you can see in a second. Now, Bance has two names that he comes up with. So Scrappy probably isn't even in the chat. I don't know. Each team has one representative. So there are two individuals that seemingly are holding everyone hostage. One of them, according to Bance's insight, former teammate actually, and one of them is Clayster on the Vegas Legion. Interesting from Clayster, just because Clay has traditionally been the guy that's been like, look, no GAs, let's play the game out of the box. Whereas maybe this year it's a different story, and maybe just because the only way Vegas are going to have a decent chance of having some success is if, you know, the game style and meta kind of caters towards them. I don't know. But Bance obviously isn't a happy man. Thanks for 2v10ing the rep chat, getting smokes and snipers out. And this is the thing, right? It's crazy to me that, you know, the idea is of this rep chat, clearly the majority of teams, 10 teams apparently want the smokes and snipers in, 2 teams want it gone. So surely in terms of a majority, and it's like, okay, whatever, like the teams are going to disagree on what should be allowed and should not. But if it's 10 versus 2, it's a no-brainer that it should stay. But because the pros that are, you know, seemingly on board with wanting it gone can, you know, they're just constantly trying to convince the other team saying, oh yeah, if you don't do this, we're going to start using thermals, all this stuff. Then the other teams are like, well, you know, this is just a bit too much effort. Let's just get rid of it. So, you know, maybe this isn't the story. The pros are saying publicly, oh yeah, we didn't want it gone or whatever. But obviously they got convinced by some reasoning from presumably Inside and Clayster. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we always talk about this, that there should be some sort of someone overlooking this to ensure that the pros are doing this in an equitable and fair manner, because as it currently is, it's just outrageous that a majority of pro teams disagree, but yet it happens anyway. And Clayster then goes on to deny that it's even him, right? So he says, you know, then who was it, Mr. Hightower? So I reckon in Methods did this whole like Hightower barrel GA on the M4, so like you could only use that attachment. And then Clay says, stop tweeting at me, I mediate the GA chat, we never even have to vote. So look, I don't even know anymore. Clayster reckons that he isn't really too involved. Scrappy reckons he's not too involved. And even Clay says the following, always ahead of the game in terms of let's GA using GAs. So, you know, I don't really, like, what's going on here, right? So now Clay is saying that actually, yeah, he's not, doesn't really want GAs anyway, and he's always ahead of the game on banning, using these ability to ban weapons. It's an absolute mess, to be honest, and the pros are obviously frustrated about it. This, I believe, was deleted from Octane, and maybe still is alive, but as he says, 2 people held the chat hostage. That's all I'm gonna say. So, yeah, I don't know about this. What do you guys think, right? I want the snipers in. They make for a much better viewing experience. I just don't think they're even too good this year, to be perfectly honest. Some, like, 2 teams want them gone, but because of the way the GA chat works behind the scenes, they have, according to Octane, held the entire CDL hostage on this the last few days and have now got their way, which is crazy because, like, the fact that there's 8 M4s running around on the map sometimes, and that's perfectly fine according to the pros, and then there's this issue on the smokes and snipers that's gone seemingly way too far for no good reason. So, I don't know if there's any potential kind of, well, repercussions from this, just because this is a 2-year cycle. Like, after they play the game without the snipers for Major 1, it's quite likely they'll just keep going with that for the entire entire 2 years? Or will there be any backlash or backtracking here? Because look, could the CDL get involved in stuff like this? To me, it's ridiculous that most teams seemingly disagree, but yet it's happening anyway, and the fans disagree, the CDL probably disagrees, like everyone disagrees with this decision, but like 2 pros in this chat it seems. So we don't really know who they are, right? We'll have some examples here in a second. Even as Slasher says, the pros in the chat who voted on it, trying to figure out who takes the blame, and trying to blame each other, right? Even though maybe teams majority do agree behind the scenes, but now, what an absolute mess. And maybe the OpTic guys are involved just because, Jackboy Jesse says, I hope it wasn't any of the OpTic guys, and Slasher says they would never, presumably in a bit of a sarcastic manner. So yeah, I don't know, speculate on that as you will. And even Drazah says this, the whole league is scared of me. So this is the other argument on this as to where this actually came from. And we saw last season, Drazah was the player that was considered to often be dropping a smoke at his feet and running around with it and stuff and abusing the one-ways. And that's seemingly why other teams want it gone, because, Drazah's pretty good at using these smokes to his advantage, and therefore the team's like, yeah, screw this Drazah guy, we want to get rid of the smokes, and therefore by extension, the snipers have to go, but really that logic doesn't add up, and we'll see that from Octane here in a second. Even as Octane says, clueless people making these calls, but Mock reckons it's you guys in LA Thieves that are ones that are abusing the one-ways the most. That's like the entire reason behind it being gone, right? Simp reckons yes, so he's basically like, yeah, Octane and co, you're screwing us all over here by using the one-ways and using the smoke grenades in this way. And then Octane comes back, the whole league snakes because of your teammates, right? And then Simp reckons the whole league snaked last year because of yours. Maybe going at Drazah, I'm guessing, not really sure. And anyway, it's kind of funny really. But Simp and maybe the FaZe guys, it's weird because Simp seems to be in favor of it being gone here, but then Sasha is in favor of keeping it. So what's going on at the FaZe camp? I don't even know. But yeah, Simp's basically like, yeah, it's Thieves' fault for getting rid of this. And then Octane's like, well, actually, there's other broken things in the game, such as the snaking, and it's your guys' fault with Cellium that people are doing that all the time. And then Simp disagrees, so an absolute minefield. And then we've got this from Scrappy, right, kind of coming back to the start here. It's not that it's OP, Sam. Smokes are broken and make so many maps offense heavy when Search and Destroy is not played like that. So maybe that was one of their arguments, that, oh yeah, offense is just way too good with smoke grenades allowed. And as Octane says, don't really care too much about the smokes, more about the snipers. How does that logic add up from them being arguably better in last year's game with no attachments in this year's game, of course, but yet we still don't use them this year, despite the fact that the smokes are still gone, the snipers should theoretically be fine. How does that logic really add up? And as Octane says, did it all of last year, no problems at all. Look at the maps though, but it's yeah, the logic changing from year to year doesn't even make sense, especially that this is the least mobile sniper we've ever had with 0 attachments on. So yeah, when the smokes and snipers were better last year and we get the snipe out, just doesn't really add up and make any sense. aBeZy reckons that actually it should be gone because no smokes actually makes it slightly more defense heavy, more favored for the defense. Offense right now is better on most maps with the smoke grenades, but yeah, still I don't really understand where all these arguments are concluding. And this, Nadeshot's kind of summing up a lot of the community perspective on this. It was frustrating when it happened during Cold War, and it was the case for the entire season. And then in Vanguard, we managed to effectively get the pros to change their minds. But again, as Nadeshot says, you guys are sucking the fun out of the game, right? The snipers are often some of the best moments during the games. And yeah, I don't really know if I'm going to be watching much Search and Destroy without much sniper action. It doesn't make an overwhelming difference. It probably isn't as big of a deal as people are really, making it out to be at times, but I still think it's an important factor here. And Nature obviously isn't happy. He reckons no argument, you guys could make a change my mind, especially because the CDL is arguably at rock bottom, right? This is where the pros have to realize to a certain degree that it's going to be a struggle for this next season to make the game competitive, first of all, but also to actually maintain any interest in the scene, because the game obviously and the developers aren't really helping much with that, and the CDL seemingly aren't helping much either, that we'll see later in the day, but yet they're still kind of going against this, right? And look, Aches makes a point here. At the end of the day, doesn't matter what happens, 25k viewers across the board for the matches, and this might have an element of truth to it, obviously. And the CDL has to take some responsibility, and Activision themselves, to actually try and make some decisions to grow the scene, but I think there'll definitely be an element to it during Search and Destroy and stuff. People won't be tuning in as much because there isn't, snipers aren't in play, and also some of the highlight moments you get with snipers that can then get broadcast out to the public, and you get these great moments and highlight videos and stuff, they just won't be appearing anymore. So intrigued to your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. It's an absolute mess, to be honest. The pros are coming at each other's necks, and they're all trying to pretend that they weren't involved in this to the public, because the public isn't happy about it, obviously, but yet they all voted on it at the end of the day. And is there really a good solution here? Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, take care, and I will see you next time.